Hey everyone, and welcome back to another midweek conversation here. My name is Joe Eric, and I'm here with Pastor Lisa, and we are excited to have a conversation between each other, but we know that for all of you that are going to watch this, man, we just hope that it blesses you, and hopefully it is getting the message across that how vital and important these conversations are. Yeah. Sundays are important. We need Sundays to be encouraged from our pastors, but we need to learn how to have conversations with each other and to ask questions. That's what we're able to learn, and also help us apply what we're learning on Sundays into our lives. And so today, I want our conversation to be surrounded on the subject and topic of distractions. Pastor Steve, this past week, week 3 of our series, Squeeze, talked about them towards the end. And I want us to have more conversation around it, because I think distractions is something that no matter how old the people are that are watching, from a 10-year-old to a 7-year-old, they are facing distractions in their lives. It's running rapid in our culture. And so what are your thoughts on distractions before we get into these specific?
I think distractions are so key, especially to the strategy of the enemy. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? I think it was C.S. Lewis that said he doesn't have to make us bad if he can make us, if he can distract us. Yeah. In other words, make us ineffective as Christians. Mm-hmm. And when we're distracted on other things other than what God has called us to, then it shuts us down. Yeah. Like, it doesn't matter if you can be the best Christian. Mm-hmm. It doesn't matter if you're good. You could be the best Christian and be completely ineffective at what God has called you to do. And I think that's one of his strategies. Yeah,
and I think that's ultimately why we want to have this conversation, because the reality is we have a lot of ineffective Christians out there that God did commission us. There is a mission. Yes, we are not saved by works. It is about a relationship with Jesus, but he did call us to get to work and to go fulfill a mission that is reaching all people, spreading the gospel, the good news, and ultimately bankrupting hell and filling up heaven. And too many of us at too many times are distracted, walking distracted. And honestly, the scary part is not even knowing it.
Oh, no, not at all. It's our culture. It's our culture to be distracted, and to have all of this going. We like the and I know that we're getting back to grassroots things, but everything is like pretty lights, big show, lots of color. I've got a distraction in my pocket. If this thing goes off, I'm gonna be like, oh, I can feel my phone. Like I'm distracted right now. Like how does, it's so easy to catch our attention and move it to something else. Yeah.
And culture, that's what culture's fixed on. Marketing, people are fixated on. Oh, for sure. How do we get people constantly back on track and distracted again on our topic instead of everything else in their life? And so really the 3 distractions that I want to look at and talk about today is, because believe me, there are plenty out there, but the 3 have to do with emotions, opportunities, and people. And so really let's look at emotional distractions, which is funny because when I heard it on Sunday and as we're talking about it, like I would have never thought like my emotions distracting me. That's kind of weird. Like so why would you think maybe that one kind of slides under the radar for a lot of people, and what makes you think that gives us that our emotions play a big part in the distractions in our lives?
Well, our emotions are motivators, so they motivate us to either change a circumstance, like anger, for example, is not a negative. It comes from God, but it says be angry and sin not, but it motivates us to change, and we can use those things that it motivates us for something other than what God wants us to. There's seasons, there's times of, he says it, and there's a time for mourning, there's a time for joy, there's these different emotions. They're given to us, but we can invest them into the wrong things. So it's good that I would have an anger against sin, but it's bad if I have an anger against an entity or an organization, and it drives my time to invest all of my emotional energy into that thing. And so we've got tons of causes out there, and I think that we've been given authority over the earth, and God gave it to us to rule, and that's great, but it cannot supersede the ultimate calling, our high calling, and that's people. Yes. That's people, and we're not against people. We're for people, with the gospel.
I mean, and we see it in God, how his emotion also drove him to save us. Is that, I, in John 3:16, that was because I loved you that I sent my son. Yeah, for sure. It wasn't just out of random act, like, oh, I think there no, it's like, it's because there was an emotion, and again, action was driven from it. And I think we hear a lot of like, our actions need to change, and ultimately, because we do, like when we're born again, as we're saved, our actions do change, but the root of that comes from our emotions. We live in a culture, and we're seeing the next generation grow up in a place where emotions lead us, and that's not the truth. That is not the gospel.
I don't think it's like a lead. It shouldn't necessarily lead us, but I do think frequently it's a launch pad.
Yeah.
And it launches you in an appropriate direction, like
Yes.
it causes the change, like we were saying.
Yes.
When that emotion is over, and you've made this commitment to Christ and whatever, or you've had this moment at the altar, and you're moved to make this change. You know, what happens when you don't feel that anymore?
Oh yeah.
What happens when you don't feel the emotion anymore? You know, we were talking about that, earlier. Does God change his mind on things?
Well, we see that in the altars, but we see that everywhere in everyone else's lives, because
Absolutely.
emotions are ultimately, sadly, are leading people. Some of the times I feel this way, so I'm going to jump in this relationship. I feel like this. From little things to what we feel like eating, to who we feel like spending the rest of our life with.
Yeah.
And what happens, and I guess the question is, what happens whenever, the feelings run out?
Yeah.
And sadly, too many times, I want to say this before we get into the next distraction, is that too many times our emotions talk ourselves out of even God opportunities and God moments.
Yeah.
Because if I'm David, believe me, my emotions would have told me to run away from Goliath. When actually the Goliath battle with David was a setup for ultimately the next step for David's life.
That's right.
And we can't allow emotions to be our God, because it's not.
Yeah.
Ultimately, our emotions are from God. It's a gift. It's a blessing. But they're always meant to come under and surrender under. And I think if we can do that, I think that'll help a lot of people. Because they're not God. Emotions aren't God.
I had a legitimate prayer, like, coming into Christ and then just coming into Christ a little bit later on in life, that sometimes inwardly, even though I'm not external showing, but inwardly my emotions were just, up and down. And I always kind of the roller coaster emotion. I always prayed for God to just kind of steady that out. Because, we can all see it. You can walk into a job interview and the person's reaction to receiving a job and their promises of, I'm going to be the best employee you ever had, are really great at the time of the interview. Yeah. But you get 5 years down the road and this person could actually be working completely against the company or against the vision or for. And so it's important that we manage our emotions, because if we don't, then it turns into attitudes, and attitudes are contagious. It changes the atmosphere. Yeah. And so we have to be in tune with what's going on in our emotions and make them come under the will of God. You know what I mean? The authority of who He is. And
really quick note, and I would just say for anyone watching, if you don't like the atmosphere you're living in and working in, I would go to the root and look at what emotions were planted that grew the atmosphere in. And so we can talk all day on that.
How have I contributed? Yeah.
Exactly. The second one is the opportunity distractions. Pastor Steve talked a little bit on it, but again, why? Can you help us maybe get a better understanding of how do we distinguish what is a God opportunity and a enemy's distraction? Like how do we distinguish that?
Yeah. Well, a God opportunity is always going to not just prosper you, but it's going to be beneficial to others. Okay? Yeah. Right? I know, I just got that. That sounded good, right? Yeah. I was like, man, that is good. I had the thought, but I didn't articulate it well.
Because most of the times, we're thinking about ourselves in any opportunity.
Any blessing, this is what I was saying, for real. Any blessing is a blessing, not just to you, but to me as well, if I want to bless you. So that's why we get into the thing like, hey, I need you to bless me, or I want you to bless me with, well, that's great, but I think it works for the good of everyone. And so God is going to do that. Like when God is blessing you, it's going to be the benefit for everyone. But these opportunities come in very pivotal times in our life. Yeah. And I remember it. Like I was coming out of a job situation where I was being basically set up to take over the company, and it was producing. Like the company was great. It was we did a little bit of interior decor and flowers for private people, political figures, celebrities, stuff like that. Yeah. And there was this huge setup where I was being offered this space in Martha Stewart magazine to create some flowers. And for us, in that industry, that was like, oh my gosh, that's like the big deal, right? And for me especially, because I'm just like, what, me? Like, are you kidding? And it was phenomenal, but it came at the same time that God was moving me to go to Bible college in the most phenomenal Bible college in the world for its time, because it was in the heat of revival. And so I easily was in this decision, and this opportunity was for money. This opportunity was for success. This opportunity was for the esteem of man. But I still couldn't shake the question when I would wake up in the morning, what am I investing my life into, and what is the return? because when it's a return just for me, it's what does it benefit anybody else? So we have to look at what the opportunity is getting us off of track.
Yeah, I think from my own life, I had to come to a big decision graduating high school where it's like, is baseball, is physical therapy going to be the route? And I can do great there. I can be a nice guy. I can, bring Jesus into work. But
and still be blessed to a measure.
Yes. Yeah.
Still be good.
And not be cursed by God, but
gosh,
still be loved by him and saved and
Right.
get my, go into heaven. But, or say, no, I want to do full-time ministry. And what I learned within that is that opportunity, that fork in the road wasn't the main point. I think, with my opportunity in that moment, with what you just said, your opportunity, and for everyone's opportunity out there watching, is those opportunities are actually more about our opportunity to connect and grow closer with God, to help us and guide us. I think that's the bigger thing, what God's trying to draw us in, is every opportunity that comes that we're like, I don't know what we should, it should automatically draw us closer back into the relationship within, and to help us, and to ultimately, allowed him to lead us again, bringing him back into the forefront of our lives. And I think that's, most of the times we can, again, led by our emotions or what feels good, but rather than stopping and really truly going back to the Creator and figuring this out, of like, even the thought of a change in someone's life, that can always be driven and brought back into God. And so, one of the, I think maybe you said, or one of our pastors here said that a good opportunity at a bad time is still a bad thing.
Yeah, it's a bad opportunity.
Because it has to be brought back under God's time and under God's will. And so, again, there's so many more things that we can talk about when it comes to opportunities. So
there's tons on opportunities.
And so the last one is people distractions. Because, again, when it comes to people, our emotions are in it.
Yeah.
Opportunities are in it.
Yeah.
And I guess the last question we can kind of dive into is, why is it that when it comes to people distracting us, why does that one seem to hurt us the most?
Yeah.
Why is it that we see people from a relationship, from a family, from friends, from just a workplace, the circle of people are surrounded, why does it seem like that distraction, is the one that hurts people the most?
Yeah. I mean, there's so much to unpack in that. It's the investment and the intimacy that you have in relationships with people.
Yeah.
And so you feel like you've given something, a part of yourself, and you feel like you've received a part of them as well. And so, it includes all kinds of different emotions. But I think a lot of it is that we have to get our expectations in a correct order, that I think that we set people up. Like when we come into church, we know that there's going to be somebody that comes in and they're expecting the perfect relationship because the person that they're wanting to date is a Christian, and that's enough. Good enough, check mark, they're Christian, so God's going to work it all out and it's all going to be perfect. And that's simply not true. But we have that same expectation for our friends. We have that same expectation in church for our leaders or our teams, for our pastors. We have this expectation that there's this supernatural thing that's going to happen, that it doesn't have to come from you. It has to come through the Holy Spirit working but it still involves you. There's still, it's past the emotional side of that. So we have to keep our expectations, and there's just boundaries sometimes you have to put in place. Like, we just want to ignore the red flags and call it, no, I just love you enough to get past the red flags. Hello, victim spirit. No, we didn't know. Like, you're signing up for stuff that you don't have to sign up for. And so you keep the right people close. Don't have the expectation of finding that boyfriend, girlfriend, BFF, spiritual mother, a mentor, or whatever. Don't have that expectation, and come into alignment with what God wants to do, and watch him align you with the people that you need to be around, even the ones you don't want to be around, because sometimes we don't necessarily want. That goes back to the emotion thing again. Sometimes we don't want to be challenged. We want the easy people.
And I would say too, on the other side of expectations, is for people a big distraction as well, is for the people that expectation has been put on. What gets us distracted is that we feel the need to fill it, to be the mother, spiritual father, someone that God's like, they have a dad.
Yeah.
They have a mom, to be the spiritual boyfriend to save the girlfriend, or vice versa. Like, if that expectation has been on, like, you are not Jesus.
Yes.
And that is okay to say.
Yeah.
Like, Jesus is going to do Jesus, and we've been called to do what God has called us to do.
Yeah.
And I think that's freeing for people. Like, I think that's a big reason why For many people, they're distracted. They're spending their time trying to be Jesus for people.
Yeah.
When that's not at all what
I
we
think
come
this
to
is
do.
the defining line, because we want to be a friend.
Yes.
We're called to be nurturers,
Yes.
and many teachers, but not many mothers and fathers in this generation. We know this generation and the culture of needing that nurturing, and that's good until it replaces them
Wow.
setting their eyes and focusing on God.
Wow.
Because then we become the distraction.
Wow.
Man, and godly.
What I would just say to end here is, I think what that last statement says, it's good and it's in line with God until it replaces God.
Yeah.
When it comes to our emotions,
Yeah.
when it comes to opportunities, and when it
Yes.
comes to people, they are all given by God.
Yeah.
They are all, I believe, God designed and ordained,
Yeah.
in seasons and in parts of our lives. But the moment it replaces God, the moment our emotion replaces God, the moment the opportunity and what it brings replaces God, and the moment the people that God brought into our life
Yeah.
replaces Him, I think that's when we're like,
Yeah.
that's a distraction. Let's call it out. Let's get wisdom around our lives
Yeah.
and to start getting ourselves back into a healthy relationship with God and with people, so we can continue to be effective and
Yeah.
not ineffective. And so
Yeah.
I think this conversation helped
Yeah.
me. I know it's going to help
cool.
everyone
Yeah,
watching
for
there.
sure.
So I appreciate it. And everyone watching, hey, continue with us. Subscribe to our YouTube channel to see all of our new content on this midweek conversations that we have every Wednesday. But also join us in person here at LTL.Church every Sunday for a 10, 12 o'clock service. We love you guys, and have an incredible week.